Everyone ready? Madam Clerk, we good to go? Okay. Can I have a motion to read us out of closed session?
Sure. I move that this council certify by a recorded vote that to the best of each councilor's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Vote. Okay, we're going to begin our business meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Lord, I forgot to ask you, how long did you usually make your moments of silence?
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there, okay. Councilors, are there any announcements?
One announcement, the Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail Authority is hosting a series of public meetings as it relates to the proposed jail renovation. ACRJ will be hosting a community forum on January 25th, 2024 from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Carver Rec Center, Classroom Lounge 233. The authority seeks input from the community regarding its renovation project. Light refreshments will be provided. There is a Zoom virtual option for this meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to review and discuss 3 design options as presented by Mosley Architects. Tony Bell, Mosley Architects, and his team, as well as Jail Superintendent Martin Coomer, will be present to facilitate the meeting and answer any questions. 2 more public meetings are planned for February 12th and February 29th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., also at Carver Rec Center. For more information about the project, go to www.acrj.org/renovation project or contact Colonel Martin Kumar, Superintendent of ACRJ at kumarm@acrj.org or 434-977-6981. And again, would encourage anyone with thoughts about the project to attend those 3 sessions. And then one other announcement, just real quick. The Virginia Breeze is a bus service that goes from Charlottesville to Northern Virginia. They are proposing potentially expanding service from Charlottesville to Richmond and Virginia Beach. If you believe that that should happen, I would encourage you to go to virginiabreeze.drpt.virginia.gov and fill out the survey to let them know you would like that service expanded there, which would be a huge opportunity for the city.
Great, both. Thank you for both of those. Yep.
The Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, in conjunction with some other local organizations, including EVA Sustainability and Ravenna Trail, groups are hosting city neighborhood walks the second Sunday of every month. They did the first one last weekend, and in recognition of it being Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend, they led the site to various, they led the walk to various sites around town that had to do with the civil rights movement and locations that had been in the Green Book. So that was a really cool way to launch the walk schedule and to get a little more history about neighborhoods. So they're going to be doing that throughout the year, again, the second Sunday of every month. If you want to join those, check out the BPAC Facebook page, but also get on the mailing list. You can do that by emailing bikeped@charlottesville.gov, and they'll add you to the list.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't realize that.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
And there was a great turnout.
It was a great
awesome.
turnout. I saw that. Any other announcements? So we do have a proclamation. Last week was National Day of Racial Healing Recognition, but we didn't meet last week, so we have a proclamation, and it's not too long, but I thought it would be meaningful if we all read part of that. And Ms. Oshman, can you begin with this?
Sure. Whereas the Charlottesville City Council envisions Charlottesville to be a place where everyone thrives and is committed to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion through the implementation of equitable practices and policies across its activities. And whereas we understand and recognize that we must all work earnestly to heal the wounds created by systems of oppression and exploitation founded on false ideals of racial difference. We must work to build a just and equitable society that values, respects, protects, and empowers all people. And
Sure. Whereas City Council dedicates itself to the principles of inclusion, racial healing, and social equity in order to bring the necessary changes in thinking and behavior that will propel our great city forward as a unified force to become a community where everyone enjoys dignity, respect, and success. And
I'm sorry.
I apologize. Whereas commitment to and action towards racial healing is vital and crucial to the well-being and betterment of all community members in the city of Charlottesville.
And whereas community members in the city of Charlottesville have a unique responsibility to work earnestly and collaboratively to create courageous and supportive environments that acknowledge the traumatic past, promote the healing of the wounds created by racial, ethnic, and religious and other social biases, and build an equitable and just society so that all people of the city of Charlottesville's community can thrive.
Now therefore, the City of Charlottesville City Council, in unity with others throughout the United States of America, takes great pleasure in recognizing Tuesday, following Martin Luther King Jr. Day, as National Day of Racial Healing, and urges the community to organize for the promotion of racial healing on this day and throughout the year. Signed and sealed this day, January 16, 2024, by the mayor, Juan Diego Wade. So thank you all for
Excellent.
participating in that. Thank you so much. Are there other recognitions or anything people want to share? If not, Ms. Thomas, please read the consent agenda.
Consent agenda number 3, minutes, November 13th work session, November 14th joint public hearings with Planning Commission, November 20th regular meeting, November 29th zoning ordinance work session, January 9th joint meeting with Planning Commission, January 10th joint meeting with School Board. 4, resolution to appropriate funding from the FY23 State Criminal Alien Assistance Program grant for Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail, $16,768, second reading. 5, resolution to appropriate funding from the Capital Improvement Plan contingency account to Virginia Supportive Housing for Premier Circle, PSH, $750,000, second reading. 6, ordinance to amend, reordain, and reenact Chapter 30, Article 4 of the City Code, Real Estate Tax Relief for Elderly and Disabled Persons, to move the application or certification deadline to April 1st.
Thank you. We'll now take public comments regarding items read on the consent agenda just read by the clerk. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes. If there's anyone in the council chamber who would like to speak on an item that was just read. Is not. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, please vote. Motion passes 5-0, and to adopt the consent agenda. Mr. Sanders, is there a report from the city manager's office?
Yes, sir. Couple things this evening. I'm going to turn it over for a couple of presentations. First, our city sheriff is going to give his budget presentation. He was unable to make the round that you all just completed, and I didn't want him to miss the opportunity to be able to speak to you about his budget. So, Sheriff.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, it's going to be up there. Okay.
I skipped ahead a couple pages. You go back the other way.
It's slow.
Okay. I'm James Brown. I'm the sheriff of Charleston City Sheriff's Office. Been in that position since January 1st of 2010, so it's been a little over 14 years. The Sheriff's Office is committed to providing the best possible service in a timely manner while being fair to all citizens, employees, and management. The sheriff is to make the best use of his various talents while at the same time maintaining an environment that encourages others to show their initiative and pursue their interests. Everyone is important at the sheriff's office, and the sheriff will respect the diversity and worth of every individual and will cultivate trust in our organization by delivering our services with honesty and accountability. Did I just do this? Okay. So this is an organizational chart for our office. We're fully staffed at this point for the first time in just over 2 years. We hired a new person and they've completed everything, so they're ready to go. One of the first questions that people ask, because we have a police department and a sheriff's office, so people often ask, what is the difference between the two? The police department handles criminal and traffic law, so they respond and are dispatched to various calls where you see them running around with lights and sirens, those emergency calls. We assist when we can, but we're often tied up in court. And then we handle civil law. So when we're going around, some of the papers we can post, we don't necessarily have to arrest folks when we're going to serve papers, garnishment for wages, subpoenas, various paperwork that just gives them a court date so they know to come to the court. So those are big differences. The duties for our sheriff's office are defined in the Code of Virginia. It's pretty straightforward, but we have courthouse and courtroom security for our jurisdiction. We're charged to transport inmates for the various courts, and sometimes that means going to other localities to pick up prisoners anywhere throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we serve civil documents. Other duties that we have, extraditions. We haven't had as many recently with COVID. Folks just kind of work things out, and that's still been going on, but we have extraditions. We transfer mental patients and assist the police department. We do that primarily during the day, and then on the weekends we do that 24/7. It helps keep law enforcement officers on the street to help keep folks safe. So that's one of the things we do. Evictions, levies. We have businesses that may be found, at fault for things, and we have to seize property and do sheriff sales to make everyone whole that was ripped off or whatever happened with that business. Jury duty orientation, lobby duty, security station, trespass notices, unclaimed bodies. That's in the Code of Virginia. So if we have a deceased person and they don't have family members or someone that can claim the body, then we end up processing that individual. Concealed handguns permits, and then we have staff and training updates. The civil papers, these are the stats for 2022. We're currently gathering the ones for 2023. We have to report those to the comp board every year. So for 2022, the civil paper and subpoenas that we processed was 39,245. We do have that number for 23, and it's 43,000, just over 43,000 this year. Inmate transports, 257 have been local, so that's between our local jail out here on Avon Street, the Albemarle Charleston Regional Jail, and the 119 non-local, again, are from jails from anywhere else in Virginia. Mental patient transports, 10 local. That's when we have folks that sometimes just have to be moved from one floor to another at the hospital. We have to come do that because state code requires that TDO, to temporary detention order, to be executed by law enforcement, so we do that. And then 178 non-local. Again, that's throughout anywhere in Virginia. One of the places we have to go in Southwest Virginia, we actually have to go into Tennessee briefly in order to get back into Virginia to finish serving that, placing that person so they can get some mental health treatment. And again, this happens, at times 24/7. It can be 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. So it's, it's important that our folks, have good, safe vehicles for the person that they're transporting as well as for the deputies. jury summonses, that's 1,817 from 2022. With the juries, we have those set at what's called a docket call, and that's when we try to get as many people there as we can to go over the process of what it would be like when you come to court, so we serve those. Total between the courts that we serve, we screened 34,000 people in 2022, and that's going to be a little bit higher. And then for the unclaimed bodies, which I had talked about, we had 18 in 2022 that we processed. Additional things that we do, or I do, the jail board, we are on the police academy over in Wares Cave. We have to do our budget every year. We have to submit some to the comp board. As a constitutional office, the comp board pays or reimburses the city for a good bit of the monies. And with the way it works out, it's typically around $600,000 to $700,000. With that being credited towards the amount of our budget, typically we're under $1 million, and our budget represents less than 1/2 of 1% of the city's total budget. So it works out well in that sense for direct monies from the city taxpayers. Weddings or crest of speaking engagements, and then there's some groups that we do. We do Triad, which is a program to assist seniors, helps prevent them from being victims of crime, and also goes over safety. We do Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, which is a program that tries to help youth stay on the right track so that they don't end up going through the criminal justice system. RAD is the Women's Self-Defense course. We actually developed a basic self-defense course that we do, and we'll be offering that. That's open to everybody and anybody that wants to learn different ways to defend themselves. And emergency preparedness is one of the other things that we do. We work with Department of Social Services and the Red Cross in regards to setting up shelters when we have emergencies. We've had to do that before, during bad winter weather. We had to do it during microburst a few years ago. We opened up a shelter for about 3 days. When that happens, we are the people that actually secure the shelters. The present challenge we have, our courthouse and courtroom security assignment. We're, working on some issues with that. And we are in the process of becoming an accredited agency. We've been working that for a few years, but we've had turnover in the office. And with the turnover, the person that was the accreditation manager ended up leaving, so then you have downtime in between while you're getting a new person. So we've been working that for a few years, but the person we have now working on it, we should be in good position to be accredited in 12 to 18 months. And space for staff, we had the renovation, but we are pretty much maxed out right now for our space for staffing. Let's see. And so that's pretty much it. That's where the money goes for our budget.
Yeah.
It goes to those things. It's not a lot of flashy things with lights and sirens. We do assist the police department. When we have emergencies or things like that, our folks will stop civil process to go help if there's a crime in progress. There are times, I know we had there was a shooting incident involved out near the bypass and Hydraulic Road, and when that happened, our folks stopped civil process and we started answering calls for service for the citizens so that we still have law enforcement. All the people for the sheriff's office are fully law enforcement certified officers. So they can cover the calls when the police department gets tied up with various things. If someone's barricaded and we help them block a road so people don't come down, or we'll actually go start serving calls and helping the citizens.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you. So, any
Does anyone have any?
questions? For Sheriff Brown.
I have one question.
Yes.
What do you end up doing with 18 dead bodies?
So we don't
I
actually.
had
do
never
anything with-
thought about that as part of your job, so.
Yes. So we work with one of the local funeral homes, and they primarily will, because they don't have folks that can think about recognize them, so we work with local funeral homes, and they process the individual.
Does that person get buried someplace or kept in the funeral home's morgue or mortuary until somebody finds them, or what?
Right, they do cremations, and then after, I think it's about 5 years or so, if there's still no one to claim them, then they'll do a burial at sea.
Okay. Thank you. It's interesting.
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting, and thank you
Yeah.
for your service.
Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
Thank you. You all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next up is Rion Anthony, our Interim Director of Parks and Recreation.
James, you forgot your jacket. I'm sorry.
He's going to speak to you about the ongoing project of maintaining trees on the downtown mall.
Testing, can you hear me? Thanks. Thanks, Mayor and council members. Today, I'm very happy to announce that we secured and ratified a contract with Hove Josie, a very important study. It's the Downtown Mall Tree Management Plan. And it's a local homegrown, which I'm very happy that won the bid. Their office is just downtown, and it's nice to have a local consultant that actually knows what's occurring within our city, and especially with the downtown trees. So I'm very confident and happy that they won the bid, and they would do a really, really good job. So further ado, I would introduce the principal in charge, Paul.
All right, thank you, members of council and members of the public, for coming. So we'll, just making sure this works here. So I'm Paul Josie with Wolf Josie Landscape Architects. We're based here in Charlottesville, Virginia. We're a women-owned landscape architecture firm in town, and you'll see a number of us wandering around the mall probably, but myself and Peter Russell, who's the project manager, who's also a licensed landscape architect and arborist, will also be involved throughout the project. Our background, we do a lot of campus tree planning, as well as institutional tree planning, as well as major urban waterfront and downtown design. So we've worked on the 100-year tree plan for the mall at the University of Virginia, as well as the tree plan for the Duke Central Campus Quad, the Able Quad. We've also worked on soil management plans for all the Smithsonian museums in Washington, D.C., as well as the District Wharf, which is a 27-acre development in Washington, D.C., which we were involved with all the landscape and all the streetscapes and trees. So we have a lot of experience in urban planning, urban design, and trees and soils that brought us to this project. And so we're joined by a great team. Keith Pitchford of Pitchford Arbor Associates, right in the back here. He's an arborist who worked with the city on the 2015 mall tree assessment. We're also working with Line and Grade, a local firm who knows the utilities of the mall very well as a cost estimator as we get into proposals for how to keep the trees healthy and potential replacements in the future, what those costs might be. So this project is the pedestrian areas of the mall. So from the Omni all the way to the trees at the edge of the Ting Pavilion lawn. This is the extent, as well as some of the side streets as well. The project has 4 phases, and we'll go into these quickly in a second, but just briefly, there's a startup phase, as well as a site analysis and research phase, which we're in the middle of now, followed by recommendations for what to do in the future, and then after we sort of have a consensus from many people, we'll have a final plan, a management plan for the trees of the downtown mall. And how these occur now, the project startup is just us collecting surveys and such, all the data we can get, and then what we're in now is the site analysis, where we looked at all the trees health. We're also working with all the members of staff to understand how they interact with the trees in the mall, from fire to utilities, safety, as well as cafe space. So we'll be collecting all that information now. And then you'll see us again in a month or two with recommendations and a proposed plan for the trees. Through this process, we'll be working with the city management team on Parks and Rec, with Rion, Stephen, the city arborist, and Robert Mathis. And so we'll be working with them, as well as 2 different subcommittees, a city steering committee, as well as a community advisory committee. And those are broken into 2 groups. The city steering committee is really Parks and Rec, Public Works, NDS, economic development, public utilities, as well as the fire department, groups that have some involvement with the downtown mall, as well as from a community standpoint, a member from City Council, the Tree Commission, BAR, Architecture School, Friends of the Downtown Mall. So a number of different groups will be really engaged and involved in this process for recommendations for the future of the trees. So again, we're right at the beginning of January, as of 2 weeks ago when we submitted this, towards the end of January. But we're working with city staff right now to really gain all their information. And we're just going to look quickly at the tree inventory and assessment and where the trees are currently. So this is the extent, again, of this area. The trees were planted in 1976 by Lawrence Halpern and Associates. That was the first phase, and the second phase was done in 1980, which is the sort of the central place trees, as well as the end by the movie theater. Those were done in the second phase. Then the Omni was 1985, and then a few phases before that led to the re-bricking effort in 2009. And the most current is the area around the Code Building, which was done in 2022. So it's comprised of a number of different parts, and then this is all of the area that we're looking at. We looked at 91 trees initially. We've also expanded the scope slightly, but with these trees, I'll just point out 15 have already been removed of these trees. There's a high proportion of trees in Central Place that are missing. You'll notice those giant steel grates where trees used to be in those areas. So we're starting to see a lot of trees in decline on the mall. From a species type, over about 60% of those are the large willow oaks, those tall canopy trees you see in the middle of the mall, with a number of ginkgos on the side streets and Shumard oaks towards at the pavilion itself. But generally, the willow oaks are really the primary tree you experience on the mall.
Sorry, just a quick question on a couple slides back when it says existing trees inventories, 91 trees, additional 38 trees to be added. What's the context of those 38 additional trees?
Thanks. Yeah, that's actually around the Omni. So we weren't sure if those were in the scope when we did the initial assessment. Some were sort of on the property line of Omni. So we ended up adding all the trees at the Omni as well and in front of the Code Building. So those 38 trees have been assessed, but they just didn't make it into these slides 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
so
thank you.
So we also looked at how big the trees are, how they're growing, the trunk, the canopy, how much live canopy, how much dead wood we see in the trees. We're also looking at any damage, any required pruning, maintenance requirements for these trees. So we're capturing these all in a very large spreadsheet, which you don't have to read. It's but it really prioritizes overall condition of the trees and gives a place, a datum for future generations to look at the trees and how they're doing, and also for the city forester to sort of track the different trees' health, and if they have concerns, to keep going back to those trees. So we are looking at the health of the trees. Roughly 40% of the trees are in fair to poor or already removed shape. So that's a sizable amount of the original willow oaks are in poor shape and declining shape. And of other trees, it's about 35% of trees. So the trees are in decline generally, as a large grove. It's due to a number of reasons, but there are still a number that are really healthy. And when we started to look at where they're located, you can start to see here, generally in each grove, there are groves of 5 to 7, sometimes 3 trees throughout, and these groves sort of shift back and forth, so the movement of the mall is sort of a circuitous movement. But they're planted about 18 feet to 12 feet on center. They're very tight, and so the trees just outcompete one another. So you'll notice one tree in each grove sort of in poor shape that's not growing as well as others because it's being outcompeted for resources. Just like in a forest, the trees would naturally decline and some would win out over others because of their close spacing. Some areas are in very poor shape. There's one bosque that the majority of the trees are in very poor shape. You can see on the plan right there at the top. So we're sort of noting these. We're also taking their caliper of their growth. So some are at 30 inches. That's only about I think it's 20% of those are really large trees. So it's a highly variable, down to 24 to 30 inch, down to 12 inch caliper trees. So these are, even though they're planted all at the same time, they have a very different growth rate. And again, that's because the trees are planted with so much density. So you can see each grove has different colored circles, the darkest being the largest tree, the lightest being the smallest tree. So they're, again, competing for nutrients with one another. Some are growing on the edges better than the ones growing in the middle. So we're sort of tracking how healthy these trees are and their growth changes. And we're also looking at risk of these trees. Being a critical pedestrian area, we're looking at, the consequence of tree failure has a significant risk associated with it. So we're cautious with these. We're also looking at which ones are immediate concerns. And we went through this and noted a number of trees with some potential risk. This doesn't mean that all of these trees have to come down. This is really just pointing out that there are some with maybe a co-dominant leader where the bark is included and it may cause a propensity for that tree to split in time, or maybe there's a hollowed out, it's been topped and there's a hollowing of the tree. So we're noting these things just to be observed. There was one tree that we noticed that had a significant amount of dead wood. It was mostly dead. It had a hypoxin canker that had sort of run through the tree, and it was immediate fall hazard. And that tree was removed last week, just from a significant hazard immediately. But that was only one of those trees. And we'll look at some other issues. These are just examples of trees that maybe have that co-dominant leader with the two leads, or maybe they're missing a top here and there's a cavity forming and it's hollowing out the center of the tree. Not necessarily saying it's a structural issue, but something to monitor and watch over time.
When you say topped, can you clarify what that is?
If it's the main leader, so it's, typically you want to have a tree with a really straight leader. If you lose that central leader, other leaders will sort of form. But then there's still that hole at the top of the tree that water will collect in, and then rot will work its way down into the tree to hollow it out. So if it's been topped, it's lost its main leader. So these are sort of examples of trees with other conditions. This is the tree that was removed. Number 19, due to significant concerns of immediate failure. One element that was a significant concern, unfortunately a result of the pandemic, was the addition of heaters on the mall. And so 9 of the original 55 willow oak trees were impacted by heater use, where the heaters were placed next to the bark of the trees, and that actually burned away the cambium and the tree. 2 of those trees have already been removed. They're in very poor shape. So you can see here where those trees occurred, and these are the cafe enclosures of shame, and in yellow. And so some were really, the heaters were left too close to those trees and ended up killing those trees. Some have already been removed that have the hollowed out symbol. So this is just an image of what that looks like. You can really clearly see the damage the heaters have. The trees are trying to grow over some of those wounds, but they are lasting wounds forever for these trees. Some of them, again, have already been removed. It's been already removed here. So just an important thing, this led about to an NDS statement to all owners of cafe owners right away. There's now a minimum 10-foot clearance requirement. Any heater locations have to be approved in advance. If there is any the wrong placement of trees, wrong placement of heaters, they could lose their cafe permit. So it's being taken very seriously as a result of this, and we're hoping we don't see this issue in the future. So that is a very, very quick summary of what we're doing and a start to this, just to introduce it, and we will have a lot more recommendations and work with members of the public and staff to sort of come up with our next generation of plans for our trees. So that's them all. So.
I'm glad this work is being done. I guess we take it for granted, but we have to take care of the trees. I thought it was some pruning work done just in general. That was
last week, and sort of also a result of some of these concerns where we saw dead wood in the trees. That there's typical annual pruning that happens every other year or so, that the city does just to maintain.
This is a little bit more.
Yep.
More detailed.
More involved, and we're also hoping to sort of what's the plan? What's the next 20 years? Do you just let them go one by one, and then you have this sort of broken teeth plan? Do you think about a large replacement? How do you really plan for the future of these trees? So
Is that sort of your next phase of this?
next phase gets into those recommendations, and if you
Okay.
diversify the tree types, do you keep them the same? How are you observing the original design intent of the mall while also the safety, and also thinking about climate change, how these trees respond? Originally it was all maples that were planted in City Plaza. Maples are not urban trees, so they have all failed repeatedly. They were replaced in 2009. They all died again. And so thinking about different species that are going to tolerate, increasing droughts, increasing, heat elements, that are stress for trees. And so we'll take all this into account, as well as how does it impact businesses if you have to remove trees and replace them? And so how do we really realize, the life cycle of these trees and of our downtown mall? So that's kind of next steps.
And this will be wrapped up by June, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting, just the symbiotic relationship between the city as owner of the landlord of the space in the downtown mall with all the businesses that use it, and then all of the pedestrians and tourists and citizens that use it. And it's like so many things with the city, we take these things for granted. The trees are there, they're always going to be there, we don't have to worry about them. But I remember, I guess it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago when I first came on council, hearing about the need to do something specifically with these trees because of a safety issue or something. And it just, to me, goes to show not only how these things are connected, but just we have to focus on doing things that seem like, a little's not the right word, but sort of basic, and do them consistently and right and pay attention to them. And I'm just really glad to see that this is happening with our tree cover downtown. So thank you.
Thank you.
I had the pleasure of being on the tree walk last fall with Mr. Gaines and getting to see a lot of the trees and hear about the specific issues that many of them had, and being really bummed by the heater damage. Has this letter worked? Has there
lots
been
of them all
enforcement?
the
Has
time.
it?
There's been a number of. Good question. Thank you, Council. So for the most part, yes, businesses are following the recommendations. We have specified areas within a radius of 10 feet of each tree. Theoretically, all the businesses, if they do have a heater, they're supposed to be talking with MDS and planning accordingly. There are some heaters that are there. I don't know if they are in use that are not necessarily sanctioned, but as far as I know, everybody's playing nice. So we hope for the best.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to the final report with the recommendations.
I will add that this will fall right into the Downtown Mall Committee that you all might remember hearing when Mr. Rogers was here as the interim city manager. He had formed the Downtown Mall Committee with the purpose of trying to identify the next 50 years of what it will take to preserve the mall. This tree issue came up as a part of that conversation, and the committee that has worked for the past year is finalizing their recommendations. So this will layer right into that, and that'll be a part of how we continue the conversation about caring for the amenity that we have as the downtown mall. Just a few other updates, and then we are done with my report. I wanted to update council and the public in regards to an item that came up. It's been a repeat item in Community Matters in regards to the pursuit of a land bank for the city. I just wanted to share that I did recently advise council on the recent formation of a working group. That work group consists of myself, our city attorney, the housing program manager, and two planning commissioners, Phil Duranzio and Lau Yates. We met recently to have some beginning conversations. This was initiated by Mr. Duranzio, who's been a key proponent of this particular action. In that conversation, we were able to get through a lot and left the conversation with the ability to see that there is some work that we can do and that we believe that we can bring back to council for your consideration sometime later in the summer. some consideration of actually pursuing a land bank for the city, if that is your choice. The goal would be for us to bring a quality set of information for you to then process at that time and then make a decision on if that is what you would like to for us to pursue. It is a part of your affordable housing plan, so we will associate that with that work that was previously done and then allow you to give us some further direction on next steps. In addition to that, I have updates regarding two big deals to me, and that is an update to staffing in the city manager's office. Last week, I announced the selection of Eden Ratliff, an experienced public administrator who will join our team. He is moving here from Pennsylvania to serve as our deputy city manager for administration. His portfolio will include budget, finance, HR, and IT. And then earlier today, I announced the selection of Lionel Lyons, a seasoned veteran in local government, who will join us as the deputy city manager for operations, my old job. He will be overseeing neighborhood development services, public works, transit, and utilities. Both of these deputies will join us on the 5th, your next meeting, and I am so looking forward to them getting here. I have a lot of work to pass on to them. And then I want to remind the public at large that tomorrow I'll be hosting a community budget forum at Carver Rec at 6 p.m. Please come. We don't want to have this event and no one show up. It's really your opportunity to talk to me about the budget, since I am responsible for putting it together and bringing it to the council on March 5th. So it's an opportunity for you to come and engage. I will have our key team members there to talk about various things, and we will hopefully have some good quality discussions about things that you all want to prioritize in that conversation. And my goal will be to align those things with what council has given me as priorities, and then the hard work of putting this budget together. And as I have been honest with council up to this point, this is the hardest budget this city has ever had to produce, I promise you. But we're going to get it done, and everyone will be able to say, we got it done. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I forgot to ask.
No, that's fair. Public Works as well, we have announcement of 2 internal promotions. Thought I'd share with everyone. Michael Gauder, he will be the new Deputy Public Works Director overseeing facilities management and project management. He was a facilities development manager. And then also Joe Shiflett, he was our structural maintenance manager. He was promoted to facilities maintenance manager. And so I thought I'd share that. Also, kudos to our operation team for the recent events we've had with snow. That includes Public Works, Utilities, Park and Rec. But at the same time, our CAT folks, our transit folks, for making sure the visitors are being moved in public transportation, as well as our community members. So I thought I'd share that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
That
you.
is our report.
Thank you. It's now time for community matters. There are 8 pre-registered speakers, leaving slots for 8 additional speakers on community matters. If they're one of the first 8 speakers are unavailable, we'll move up someone from the wait list to move into that slot. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll now open the floor to the first pre-registered speaker, and that's Charles McCurdy.
Yeah, I'm Charles McCurdy. I live at 216 Camellia Drive, which is on bus route 4. I'm a former co-president of Impact, the interfaith group of public service agitators in town. Our transportation committee has been working for about 3 years on improving bus service in the city. Our initial studies showed that one of the problems, there weren't enough drivers, and because there weren't enough drivers, so many of the buses, not bus 4, but many of the other routes couldn't stay on time. And in our effort to make bus service more reliable, we think it's a bad idea to have a hiring freeze on new drivers at the very time when we need to expand its number. We think that CAT drivers deserve to be paid comparable to what Richmond's GRTC system pays its drivers. In Greater Richmond, the city Bus drivers reach top pay after 2 years, and yet 71% of CAT drivers can't make ends meet without a second job or working overtime, and 57%, I'm sorry, of CAT drivers have to hold a second or even a third job to manage the cost of living. This is not how it should be. This is not the time for a hiring freeze. The local faith community is on the side of the drivers. Transport advocates are on the side of the drivers. And I urge the City Council to be on the side of the drivers as well. Thank you very much. I yield my remaining 56 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. McCurdy. The next driver is Dan Miller.
Next speaker, but I can drive okay.
Did I say driver? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, hey everybody, my name is Dr. Dan Miller. I live on 1107 Avon Street. Normally I don't like to pull rank, but I figured I could do it here and sound a little bit more official and not just like I'm complaining about traffic, which really is what I'm doing. I also wanted to add, I'm happy to, I think maybe the gentleman left who was speaking about this earlier, I'm happy to snitch on any businesses that are putting heaters too close to old growth trees. That was an upsetting piece of information that I just learned, so I'm going to try to collect myself and maybe make my original point. I'd originally planned on coming and giving a small list of official city and county vehicles that I've noticed going well over the speed limit past my house on Avon Street. But in an effort to be more politically savvy and polite, I'll skip all of the different designations of official vehicle and just note that I think we have sort of instantiated or created something of a traffic emergency on both Elliott and Avon Streets, given our work to understandably alleviate traffic on Ridge Street and redo the Belmont Bridge. And what we're looking at, in particular on Elliott and Avon, is a situation that the city traffic engineer says is average speed limit, average speed that's about 38 miles an hour, which is well over the speed limit there. So I wanted to come and kind of be a squeaky wheel on that and basically say that I think when we see all these folks who are here to serve the community, who are serving the community in an official way, these are obviously folks who believe in our city and believe in our laws. And what that tells me, once I got over my initial sort of frustration and disappointment in seeing these people speeding down the road, is it's actually down to bad design, right? We're seeing a road system here that's was set up really in the 60s in a way that is not how we think about traffic these days. And really, we've had traffic calming be a promise of shifting traffic to these arterial roads. This has sort of been promised to the residents in Belmont since really 1961 from my research. So I think it's time that we do that. I think there's ways to do divided pedestrian platforms and to do radar speed limit signs and frankly just to take the speed limit on that part of Avon going out of town. We could do that tomorrow. We could take that road down to 25 miles an hour instead of being at 35, and that would be great because that's a neighborhood where I see on a regular basis kids getting dropped off to school and riding. It was 11:30 last night and I saw two brothers on a rental scooter doing figure-8 loops in the middle of Avon Street. I mean, this is a neighborhood, right? There's a park, there's people crossing to go to Browns all the time, and I'm really, really concerned looking out my window every day that someone's going to get killed, another person's going to get killed, as we did have somebody get killed on Elliott Street from someone speeding. So that's about all I've got. I've got about 5 seconds left to say I think it's time we do these traffic calming initiatives, and I also think it's time we switch CAT to EVs, and well past time we switch CAT to having obviously a union contract for the drivers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The next speaker is Robert McAdams.
My name is Robert McAdams, and I live at 2211 Williamsburg Road, Charlottesville, 22901. The second page of the Charlottesville Area Transit System Alternative Fuel Study states the two goals City Council has set: a 45% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050. To achieve these goals, CAT needs to act quickly on the transition to zero emissions buses. The fuel study does include a pilot study in 2025 with 2 battery electric buses, but there is no action planned in response to this study for almost 10 years. This makes no sense. Because battery-powered electric buses are proven technology, the purpose of a pilot study for Charlottesville can only be to identify local problems that need to be addressed before beginning a broad transition to these buses. Charlottesville is not the first municipality to make the transition to zero-emissions buses. During 2024, city staff can learn from the experiences in other cities and prepare extensively for the 2025 pilot study. Doing so will enable city staff to act in 2026 to make progress toward the 2030 goal. Last year, 2023, was the warmest year globally on record. At times, the temperature increase exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius level that scientists have warned us about. Billions of dollars of damages and widespread suffering resulted from the effects of global warming last year. This is why you have the goal of a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. I do not know why the consultants so disrespected your 2030 goal. But the decision on how to proceed with CAT's transition to zero emissions buses is not the consultants', it is yours. I urge you to act quickly to conduct a pilot study with 2 battery electric buses, then start making real progress toward both your 2030 and your 2050 goals. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Kelly Keeling.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Reed Keeling. I live in the city on Raymond Avenue at 212 Raymond Avenue. I'm a 3rd grade teacher working in a Title I elementary school in the city of Charlottesville schools. The school bus driver shortage definitely impacted our students. For some families, not having a bus was an inconvenience. For instance, one of my students who just got a bus this January was able to continue to attend school because one of her parents owns a business and has flexibility. The other parent has a remote work arrangement, and the child's grandparents could sometimes help. On the other hand, I have a student who comes from a single-parent household. Last year, when the child had no bus, cousins could help, but this year the cousins have different work schedules, and the parent's job requires travel all around the region. On one occasion, the parent had to drive from Stanton to pick up the child after school and take her back to work with him in Stanton. That's an hour-and-a-half round trip for the student, twice that for the parent. This student also missed school due to lack of afternoon transportation. Thankfully, this child was considered high priority and got a school bus more than a month into the school year. I recognize that the City Council has a lot on its plate and has to make tough decisions. However, parents should not have to risk losing their jobs to keep their children in public schools. When the City Council refuses to negotiate better contracts with our school bus drivers, our district's families are impacted and our children miss school. I think we could all agree, given the barriers, the many barriers that students have to learning, that getting children in the building should be our #1 priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Michael Solitaria. I thought I saw him earlier, but he missed. Okay, the next speaker is Shannon Gillikin.
Good Good evening. My name is Shannon Gillikin, known to you guys as the other Gillikin.
Okay. Yeah.
I am a city schools teacher and parent, as well as president of the Charlottesville Education Association. On behalf of CEA, I am here tonight to urge you to come to a fair contract with our bus drivers. Both the CAT and the school bus drivers are responsible for getting so many people in our city to school and to work, and they deserve a contract that honors their work. Let me tell you about the impact the bus driver shortage has had on our students and their families. It has been the case that parents without bus spots have had to use their lunch breaks late in the day to leave work, come get their kids, and then go back to work. This year, one of my students has that situation. She still does not have a bus spot, and her parent leaves every single day, and she has to leave school an hour early each day. If you had to leave work an hour early every day, would that impact your performance? It's impacting the student's education. Did you know the official end of elementary school is 2:30 p.m., but we actually end at 2:10? Why? Bus driver shortages. The buses have to come early in order to make the next run to get to the middle school and then to the high school because we don't have enough drivers. Transportation is dictating our instructional day rather than the other way around. This extra 20 minutes a day of instruction would surely improve our students' educational outcomes. And having a strong contract means more drivers and more time in the classroom for our students. At CEA, we like to say that our working conditions are our students' learning conditions, and that definitely applies here. The working conditions for our bus drivers are our students' learning conditions. Charlottesville has made some great strides in the last year for workers' rights, but we aren't done. The power sits with you to ensure our drivers get a fair contract and that our students get to school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Gregory Weaver.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Greg Weaver, Fry Spring. I'm here tonight representing the Charlottesville Democratic Socialists of America. I'm going to read a statement from CVille DSA that was approved unanimously by our steering committee, which is a democratically elected body representing nearly 300 community members. Charlottesville Democratic Socialists of America stand in solidarity with the unionized workers of Charlottesville Area Transit, ATU Local 1220, in their struggle for a fair collective bargaining process, dignified working conditions, and livable wages. For years, the workers of CAT have made it clear that the way to fix our broken transit system starts with their working conditions. Those with decades of service are earning stagnant wages. Many have to work a second job, overtime, or both to support themselves and their families. Few, if any, are able to afford to live in the city that they work tirelessly to keep running. In response, the City of Charlottesville passed a collective bargaining ordinance. However, they have so far failed to agree to a fair contract. CAT workers and their union representation have made public statements attesting that the outside attorney that the city hired has been acting adversarially and cynically during the bargaining process. Her reported attitude of disdain was unacceptable last year when she was hired to help formulate the collective bargaining ordinance, and it's worse now upon her questionable rehire to negotiate CAT's contract. A fair first contract could be a win-win for Charlottesville residents and transit workers. If negotiated in a way that puts workers first, it would help address long-standing deficiencies that have led to a driver shortage, decline in service, and hemorrhaging ridership. That means listening to CAT workers when they say that such demands as improving wages and reducing the time it takes for drivers to reach top pay are keys to retaining and attracting the drivers that are necessary to reach the city's transit goals. CVille DSA, together with countless other organizations and community members, has made it abundantly clear for years. We stand behind our neighbors and friends at CAT. We demand changes that see CAT employees thrive personally and professionally. We are keenly aware of how CAT employees' well-being is interlaced with the vision for robust, reliable transit service that is shared between riders, would-be riders, and CAT alike. We call on City Council and the City Manager to use their power to stop the obstruction. They need to be firm and tell the attorney that what the city and its people want is a contract for CAT workers that sets the standard for collective bargaining in our state, that shows that Charlottesville is behind its transit workers and those that depend on them 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lisa Glasgow.
Good evening. My name's Lisa Glasgow, and I live on Lake Forest Drive in Charlottesville. and I'm here to talk about buses and money, which might grab your attention. First, I would like to be a cheerleader for President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. This act is providing grants for cities to go electric with their bus systems. The money is there to buy both electric buses and set up charging stations. I know that's a very important part of making the change, and that Charlottesville has good grant writers who have accessed some of that money and can access more. This is the time to go electric and write for those grants, because they might go away under a different administration. I also want to comment on the Kimley Horn slideshow that we saw earlier today. If we are going to have zero emissions by 2050, we should absolutely not buy dozens of vehicles that run on fossil fuels. We should focus on proven technology that is being improved as we sit here. Electric vehicles. If hydrogen works out in the future, great, but we don't know that. And to address Mr. Snook's point about rare earths being needed and the danger that people take to get them, many companies are working on making safer, cheaper, easier batteries at the time. That doesn't have to slow down the transition. A pilot program, which we plan to start, should focus on EVs and include maybe 10 buses, and should only last long enough to iron out the creases of training people and driving and fixing them. Then we should start buying more electric buses per year until we have enough. 2 electric buses for some unknown time period while we buy many more diesel buses is crazy. It is unacceptable. We must move quickly to an environmentally sustainable transportation system. The bottom line is that people everywhere have to stop burning fossil fuels, or we will be the ones burning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have room to have one speaker to move up off the waiting list, and I'll go with Mr. Lopez.
Hello, my name is Caetan de Campos Lopez. I'm with the Commute Climate Collaborative. So a few comments on the topic of CAT and the alternative buses. First, zero-emission buses. Several times today, just like in July, the principle of being good stewards of public money was raised. I believe that nobody in this room or community should be reminded that we need to be very careful with this mentality. Putting money first has not historically promoted the best interests of people or nature. But if you want to talk about not making reckless bets with public money, I would suggest that you pay attention to this. According to Wood Mackenzie, Global Insights Business for Renewables, Energy and Natural Resources, renewable natural gas market only accounts for 0.5% of North American natural gas market today. With appropriate technology development and the right policy frameworks in place, we predict that production will grow to a modest 3% of North American natural gas supply by 2050. 3%. A 2023 article from Standard & Poor's says that, assess that the value of North American renewable natural gas today is at least 11.5 times more expensive than regular natural gas costs. The consultants that presented today have failed to mention anywhere in their analysis the risk of shortage of supply for that technology or the enormous fuel costs that it implies. Still on the topic of good stewardship of money, it saddens me to note how similar today's presentation is to the one presented 6 months ago. I wanted to remind you that according to CAT study, transition to alternative fuels only start in 2030. The selected technologies will only be piloted until 2030. That means that no bus capacity will be replaced with new technologies until 2030. Given the fast pace in which zero-emission buses have recently improved, it would be a huge mistake to be stuck with present-day picture when making such a long-term fuel decision with no real reliability impact over the next 6 years. It's a pilot. Lastly, on the topic of ZEBs, zero-emission buses, please remember that what Mr. Williams said, CAT only pays 4% of of the buses it acquires. That means that $1 million that it was mentioned several times today, the cost of a battery electric buses, actually is sufficient, $1.2 million, to buy 25 buses, or 2/3 of CAT's current fleet. So, ZBs. Lastly, CAT drivers deserve to be paid comparable to what Richmond's GRTC system pays its operators. C3 and many in the environmental community want to extend our support to the ATU and the workers of CAT and urge City Council to please give the union a fair contract. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. We now have opportunity for 8 slots to speak during this public comment period. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to address? I'll try to get around to everyone. So.
Good evening. My name is James Groves. I'm a city resident, a professional engineer, and co-chair of the Seaville 100 Climate Alliance. Last Friday, I walked to work in the snow. As I reached the corner of Rugby and Grady, a UVA bus turned the corner, loudly started up the hill, and left behind diesel exhaust fumes that I could see and smell. As I crossed the street, I thought, our city's consultants recommend that we quadruple the number of these things on our streets in the next 10 to 20 years. They're loud, generate irritatingly perceptible air pollution, and drives us rapidly away from our city's stated goal of a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Is this how my city demonstrates climate leadership to its residents? Go big green, go diesel. Without any analysis, we're told, trust us, increased ridership will offset increased bus emissions. How could Kimley Horn arrive at such a clearly flawed recommendation? I've looked for answers in their materials and found a big one. They presented to you a model, not actual data, of electric bus performance for Arlington that assumes no range or energy capacity improvement in the years ahead. They also assume electric buses will stay expensive. These assumptions are detached from reality. Please turn to page 2 of the handout provided, where you'll see how battery capacity has grown. From 2008 to 2020, energy storage capacity has increased 8 times, 8-fold. The International Energy Agency reports a 31% energy capacity improvement between 2019 and 2022. On page 3, you'll see 2 graphs that summarize how battery capacity has and likely will develop. Between 1993 and 2017, for a quarter century, battery capacity consistently grew 7% per year. Since 2017, the growth rate has increased to 18% per year. Thus, a bus today with a relatively modest 350 kilowatt hour battery should be able to store 700 kilowatt hours by 2030. On page 4, you will see how lithium-ion battery prices have dropped 80% since 2013. Forecasts predict an additional 40% price drop by 2030. Remember, batteries constitute 30 to 40% of the price of battery electric buses. Kimley Horn has irresponsibly assumed no battery improvement. Their report is a flat-out disservice to our community's climate goals. Recently, Council has heard from high school and college students, from young, middle-aged, and older voters. You have received a petition with hundreds of signatures urging rapid adoption of electric buses. Listen to the people. Intuitively, you know that we all want clean, quiet, frequent, environmentally responsible transit, not a puff of black soot when we walk to work. Go electric, go green. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groves. Young lady here, yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Joyce Martin Diaz. I am currently a transit driver operator, and I have worked for the city of Charlottesville for 19 years. I am an activist in our union and have been present for all the negotiations with the city. I'm here this afternoon to paint a realistic view of the transit and school bus system department, to make you aware that a lot of our workforce will age out in retirement soon. We will lose drivers in the next 3 to 4 years. It is very important that our wages and benefits can be there to make sure that we can replace those drivers whom we're getting ready to lose. I know the drivers very well. And also, we need mechanics. The mechanics to take care of the fleet that we have and to make the adjustment for the new buses and electronic systems that you're asking for. It's going to take time to train them and retain them with good wages. The employees at CAT right now, the morale is really tough. Honestly, CAT is in a critical position. It feels like we are barely able to make our services now. I think that getting a fair contract will help us to retain some of the situation that we're going through with buses not being on time. Our fleet is old, our buses are breaking down. Making enough wage so that the drivers do not have to work 2 jobs. They do not have to worry about their rent and their mortgages. They will be able to pay their bills on time and go toward making drivers feel more valued to the city. My coworkers and I, we struggle to use the vacation and sick leaves that we accrue because of the lack of operators. Having enough people would be a great improvement to the city and to the workforce of transit. We want a transit system that can keep enough buses on the streets. Ask the city to respectfully give us a good and fair contract that we can all be fully proud of. And staff will stay and recruit the loss of our system. And I thank you very much this afternoon for listening.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Yen. I live on 506 Ridge Street in Charlottesville. I'm here this evening to express my strong support for ATU and the workers at CAT. I urge City Council to bargain a fair contract that allows bus operators to reach top pay in 5 years or less. A wage freeze in 2024 would be absurd. We cannot have reliable service in Charlottesville unless the city pays wages that are high enough for to both attract and retain drivers. They also need to provide dignified working conditions. As you heard earlier this evening, this shortage impacts kids trying to get to school, as well as elderly and disabled residents trying to go to doctor's appointments. Many residents like to think of Charlottesville as a world-class small city. I hope that you make an investment in the workers, transit infrastructure, and electric vehicles that would be reflective of that moniker. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go over here. Is anyone in this area?
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Claire Denton Spalding, and I live in Fry Springs. Before I get to my topic, affordable housing and the land trust, I wanted to thank you all for passing the new zoning code. I know it was many years in the making and very difficult, and that was a long session. And I am excited about the possibility for increasing housing density in our city. So I signed up to speak today to encourage the council to invest in community land trust housing. I am so excited that there is a working group formed by Mr. Sanders, and I'm looking forward to seeing the result of that survey. But for those that don't know, the land trust model combines public and household ownership of housing resources. As you know, the cost of a house comes from the land and the improvement value, or the house on the land. In a land trust model, the homeowner purchases the home, or improvement value, and an entity purchases the underlying land and rents it to the homeowner. As the home appreciates or improvements are made, the homeowner receives a portion of the increase in value when they sell their home. A community land trust removes property from the market and ensures permanent affordability for homeowners. It also allows low-income families to build equity in their homes, bridge wealth gaps, and create generational wealth. So I want to encourage the City Council, as the study is going on, as this working group is coming up with recommendations, to think about funding the land bank now, so that there is funding available as soon as you all approve it, which I'm sure you will do. Thank you all so much, and I see I have 1 minute and 25 seconds left, so I will, in my last few moments, I wanted to voice support for the CAT union. I take the number 2 and the number 3 bus all the time. It's amazing. It comes on time. The drivers are friendly and kind, and I urge the City Council to give the union a fair contract. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take someone else from over here. I'll get you, man.
Good evening. My name is Keisha Pleasance. I'm a pupil transportation operator and have worked for the city since 2022. I'm also on the Union Bargaining Committee member. We are very happy to see that the city has managed to finally remove all of the students from the wait list. However, if we lose any operators, we will risk falling back into the same shortage once again. In order to ensure that we stay fully staffed, we will need to see higher wages. Increasing our wages to a livable wage will also improve our applicant pool and ensure that the best drivers want to work for the city of Charlottesville. Throughout negotiations, the union has tried to come up with ways to improve the job for pupil transportation employees. Unfortunately, the city hasn't always agreed to these proposals. We would like to see more bus aids to help ensure the safety on our buses. And you should know that these problems do not just begin and end at the school entrance. Driving the vehicle is a job in itself, but having to maintain order on a bus without an aid makes the job very difficult at times. So we would ask that the city to consider adding more bus aids. Pupil transportation workers would also like the opportunity to be able to work around the school calendar like so many other school employees do. The city has refused to even consider setting up a committee to explore this idea, and we do actually think that that is really disappointing. It would help bring in more drivers that would take the job if that meant they could get those summers and other holidays off. The most important thing, however, is continue to make full-time benefits available for pupil transportation employees. This has been a very important benefit for us, and the city's proposal to phase it out would really hurt us and would drive some of my colleagues to leave the city. We deserve to have full-time pensions and health care benefits for the important work that we do. I want to thank the City Council for giving us the right to have a union. Please ensure that we do get a contract that we will ensure we can meet and fulfill the needs of this community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Ida Hoquist. I live at 403 13th Street Northeast, and I am one of the many people who has struggled to make ends meet in Charlottesville as a graduate student, PhD student at UVA. I've made about 2/3 of a living wage, the most I've ever made as a grad student, and we're told we can't have other jobs, so that's been what I've been working with, and as such, I've always biked in Charlottesville. And I was not planning to speak, but I feel moved to because I want the council to know that as a cyclist, I have been doored almost every day. I've had loading and unloading trucks and cars park in the bus lanes. I've had runners run towards me in the, sorry, not in the bus lanes, in the bike lanes. Runners run towards me. I once had a bike towards me in a bike lane. Truly the only people who have ever kept me safe as a cyclist on the roads are our CAT drivers. I feel totally at peace when there is a bus beside me because I know from 8 years of riding on these streets that they are watching out for me. And I urge the council to do everything in your power to give these bus drivers a strong union contract with competitive wages. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Van Meter. I am captain in charge of the Salvation Army at 207 Ridge Street. I just wanted to take a moment and express our support in a proposal you'll hear shortly on the purchase of properties at Avon and Levy for potential homeless use in the future. Last fall, then Mayor Snook was on WCHV radio, and I happened upon it, and you made a comment, sir, that made a big impact. Your comment was, we don't know at this point if we need to build 1, 2, 3, or even 4 shelters in our community. The truth is, homelessness is increasing in our community. Since the end of the pandemic, homelessness has risen 47% in your area. 70% of those are individuals experiencing homelessness for the first time. Last year, the Salvation Army provided services, homeless services, to over 740 men, women, and children in our community. We provided stopgap services to 2,300 people, assistance with utilities, food, clothing, rental assistance. And in addition, 43,000 meals were given to individuals in our community because they were meeting those lines of poverty. So again, the Salvation Army is appreciative of the city stepping in and being part of the solution for a rising concern in our community, and we just stand in full support of that move. Thank you.
Thank you. We have slot for one more. There'll be other opportunities at the end.
This is also in response. My name is Holly Kiesling. I live in Belmont on Hinton Avenue. And so this purchase of this property would basically be in my backyard. And I really am bothered by how quickly this is happening. I feel like how can I possibly be opposed to homelessness, helping people that are homeless? At the same time, I love my community, and you all have done a wonderful thing with Kindlewood. And I feel like there's an increased density in that neighborhood, and I'm worried that adding a homeless shelter will be destabilizing. And I hope you will provide more information about what that would mean, because I think there are lots of things that we as a community think about and are worried about. We have a Pachim shelter, temporary shelter, near in the Methodist Church on my street, and there just have been so many more people on the street. Outside, there was an ambulance called at 3 a.m. It's just destabilizing. It's difficult, and I would just urge you to think about how you would feel if this was in your backyard. And I know someone needs to have this in their backyard, but I don't know that this is the right spot. I think we need to, there's so many kids in that neighborhood. There are 10 kids on my street. My kids go to Clark Elementary School. They bike to school. There are so many of their friends live at Kindlewood. I'm just worried. There's a bus stop for the kids getting off of the bus from Beaufort and from Walker, and they're all walking through there. I'm just worried that it's not the right spot. And I urge you all to come to our neighborhood to see that, because I know you're in Belmont, but I don't know any of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was our final speaker for Community Matters. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. We now have the action items. Matthew will introduce an item for public hearing.
Mayor, City Council, Matt Alfley, City Planner with Neighborhood Development Services. As you may recall, back in December, you had a regular public hearing for the Verve project, which was a rezoning for a residential development. At that meeting, You passed a series of resolutions, including a critical slope waiver, amending the sale of property, amending the closure of Woodrow Street, and a sidewalk waiver. During that meeting, there was questions brought up about the proffer statement. The applicant clarified that they would make a straight donation of $6,800,000, not tied to a calculation. That verbalization of changing the proffer means the proffer needed to change and it needed to be re-advertised so the public had a chance to see the new proffer. The applicant has come before you tonight with that updated proffer. The proffer statement is just a donation, $6,800,000 to the city's Affordable Housing Fund. This body will need to hold a public hearing based on that new proffer and then take a vote on the ordinance to approve the rezoning map request. I'm happy to go into more background detail if City Council needs, or you can move straight into the public hearing.
Okay. Are there any clarifying questions, councilors?
Just to verify, I assume nothing has changed.
The only change has been the proffer statement to remove the calculation so that you know you're getting that $6,800,000. The design has not changed. None of that has changed.
Thank you.
This is basically to bring the paperwork in line with what was discussed at the meeting?
Correct. It was just up there. The applicant made a promise to you vocally. They adjusted the proffer. Because the proffer was adjusted, the public needs to give the opportunity to speak on that new updated proffer.
Okay.
So I'll now open up the public hearing. Is anyone from the public that would like to speak on this? I will now close the public hearing. This is now for council for discussion. Any discussion? This is something for the public that we've had several meetings on. This is something kind of cleaning some things up that we didn't do, but
Yeah, I think we've discussed it to death. I have nothing to add other than I think the proffer, it addresses adverse neighborhood impacts from the development, and I'm happy to see it.
Yeah. Is there a motion?
Sure. I'll read the text in the packet. I move to approve the ordinance for application ZM 23-00004, rezoning the properties located at 106 through 114 Stadium Road, 409 Stadium Road, 104 Stadium Road, 102 Stadium Road, 1705 Jefferson Park Avenue, and 100 Stadium Road, city tax map parcels 16000-8000, 16000-5000, 16000-4000, 16000-3000, 16000-2000, and 16000-1000 from multifamily residential R3 to planned unit development, PUD.
Second.
Thank you. Shall we vote? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Daniel O'Connell will now introduce the next item for public hearing.
Good evening, Council. Daniel O'Connell, City Planner with NDS, introducing the rezoning application for 2117 Ivy Road. So just echoing what Matt just said on the Verve project, this was last considered by Council on December 18th. And at that meeting, Council approved the rezoning for this project with some requested changes to the proffer statement that were agreed to by the applicant. Those changes included eliminating the option to provide on-site affordable dwelling units and instead offering an exact cash contribution to the city's Affordable Housing Fund of $3,250,000. The applicant agreed to this contingent that a minimum of 634 bedrooms would be allowed within the approved project. If the number of bedrooms in the finished project was fewer, they would instead provide an amount equal to 4.5 times that which would be required under City Code, Section 3412D2, in effect as of the date of the proffer statement, which would be in December 2023. So those changes were agreed to, and so we have re-advertised and redone a public hearing in order to make them formal.
Thank you. Any clarification, questions, councilors? Okay, I will now open up the public hearing for this project. Anyone from the public would like to speak on this? If not, I will close the public hearing. Councilors, any further discussion? If
Same
not,
as the last.
Yes, yes. If not, may I get a motion, please?
Sure. I move to approve the ordinance for application ZM 23-00003, rezoning the property located at 2117 Ivy Road, City Tax Map Parcel 07000120 from Urban Corridor URB to Planned Unit Development PUD.
Second.
Okay. Please cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you all very much. The next item on the agenda is will be presented by Chris Cullinan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Chris Cullinan, the city's Director of Finance. This agenda item is a public hearing and resolution of appropriation to amend the FY24 budget, also known as the FY23 year-end appropriation. As was reported to you at your first meeting in December, the audit for fiscal year 2023 has been completed, and the city received a unmodified or clean opinion from the auditors. In order to close out that fiscal year, several year-end adjustments need to be made to various accounts, which require City Council's action. These adjustments are to carry over unspent funds from the last fiscal year into the current year. These carryovers are the result of either previous City Council direction or requirements associated with some of the specific funds. Overall, this appropriation totals $26.3 million, the largest chunk of which is from the general fund. The general fund ended FY23 with a surplus of $21.7 million in excess of our 17% fund balance policy. I talked about this a little bit in December, some of the reasons why. I'll just touch on those again, but not get into too much detail. The economic recovery we saw in FY22 coming out of COVID continued. The city's revenues, specifically things like real estate tax, meals tax, sales, our locally generated revenues performed much better than we had anticipated. Again, continuing a trend that we saw the previous year coming out of COVID. And so revenues performed better than expected. On the expenditure side, also as was noted by Mr. Rogers about a year ago now, and some of the things we also saw during COVID, we had significant savings from position vacancies and salaries and benefits, as well as some of the related things that we buy to supply those folks. But again, as you also know, Mr. Sanders, as well as our HR department, have been taking numerous steps to bolster our city's workforce. You've seen some of the notes around the police department having a record number of recruits graduating from the training academy. And as also Mr. Sanders has reported, some of those vacancies in other city departments have been gradually improving over the last year. And so as we look at the $21.7 million surplus from the general fund, you see up behind you there on the screens, as well as in the agenda item, several recommendations from staff for some specific uses of those funds. These are previous commitments and or one-time uses of those funds. I won't go through these in great detail, though myself, Ms. Hamill, Mr. Sanders can answer any questions you may have on any of those specific items. Collectively, those total about $5.9 million. And then the balance of that would be transferred to the CIP contingency per the city's financial management policy, and that would be to the tune of $15.8 million. And again, there are a few other smaller appropriations for some of our smaller funds, but again, those are typically related to requirements of those funds or their sources. But again, we can answer any questions you might have about that. I'll conclude my presentation there. Be happy to answer any questions you might have or any questions that may arise during the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Is there any clarified questions from counselors?
Just a couple clarifying questions for the public's benefit. Obviously, we get a ton of feedback on this. We have this $20+ million surplus. Why isn't it going to XYZ priorities? Just at a high level, could you explain kind of the rationale for why most of this is going directly into staff and the vast majority is going to the CIP contingency fund? It may just be helpful.
I'll say to you that when I first learned that we were going to have a surplus of this size, I mentioned to you that a big chunk of this is the result of vacancies. So we have not been able to fill positions, so we've generated part of the surplus because we haven't been able to fill those positions. It is my submission to you that as we are embarking on a number of things at the same time in regards to staff, class and compensation, and collective bargaining, that this might be an appropriate manner in which to try to manage these funds to help bring those things on board. The reality is that this is one-time money, so while I wish it were recurring and I could save myself all the headaches that I've been having lately, this actually gives me the ability to attempt to address some of the one-time expenses that are related to those two big things specifically, as well as being able to address any other priorities that we want to try to focus on. I'll also mention that the surplus being available and placed in the CIP contingency in this manner is how we've been able to make some of the nimble decisions that we've made over the past year. Keep in mind that that is how we purchased KTAC, and that is also how we purchased the Dogwood portfolio, and it was because those funds were available.
That's very helpful. And the only other clarifying question is, remind me again what the citywide reserve is specifically.
The citywide reserve is actually, it lives in our general fund. It's actually funds which we tap into and the council taps into for some smaller items throughout the course of the year. Compare that to the CIP contingency, which obviously a much larger amount of money, but again, that's to support the capital improvement plan and the city's infrastructure plans. And so, again, it's another reserve fund, but one that's a little smaller, a little more narrow in focus than perhaps the CIP contingency fund.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I would just note again for the public, in line with that on the CIP contingency fund, there are a number of critical projects which we've in principle agreed to move forward with but haven't yet funded around Park Street Maca affordable housing project, redevelopment of West Haven, so directly addressing those as well. But I have no further questions.
Thank you.
And you'll hear more about those in the upcoming budget presentation.
And there's 4.4 in schools gain sharing, and it looks like that's going to basically rolled over into supporting school capital projects, which is great.
Correct. The gain sharing program's been in place for a number of years, I think dating back to the late 90s. There is a formula that's associated with that. However, similar to last year, when I was here about a year ago, the schools requested and staff recommends that the funds all be used to help offset and support their capital improvement needs.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? I'll now open this up for a public hearing. Anyone from the audience would like to speak on this? Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? Let's see. Okay, if there are no agreement, if we're all in agreement, we can move this to the next meeting and maybe we can put it on a consent agenda item if there.
I would suggest that.
Okay.
I'd support that.
All right.
Yep.
Sounds great. Thank you. Mr. Sanders, you're going to introduce the next item?
Yes, Mayor Wade, councilors, the item before you is in regards to the proposed acquisition of 405 Avon Street, 405 Levy Street. David is going to pull up the map just for the public's benefit of recognizing exactly what we're talking about. But I just want to clear up some things because as I have spoken very little about this particular project, a lot of other information has been circulating and going beyond what I have said. So let me state for the record what it is that I'm proposing to do at this time. This is a real estate transaction to the benefit of the city of Charlottesville. it is my desire to recommend to you to use ARP funds, those are federal funds that we've received from the federal government, to allow us to make impactful decisions in our community as it relates to COVID response. These funds have been already allocated for a variety of activities that we have identified in the past few years. The funds have not all been expended. I have asked the Director of Finance to identify for me what resources are available to allow us to acquire this site for $4 million. Mr. Cullinan has found those funds, and we've been able to bring to you an item that would ask that you would allocate a little over $4 million for the acquisition of this site. The intention is to hold the site until we can determine what our housing need is as it relates to homeless services, in addition to permanent supportive housing units, in addition to those that we know are coming online. I am not committing to building a shelter anytime soon. We don't know what we will build on this site. The goal is to take ownership of the site so that the city can control what becomes of that site. We have spent a great deal of time over the past year discussing the issue of homelessness in our community. Many of you can remember what happened in October, and that was not a good feeling for us to not know exactly what we could do in response to a number of individuals in our community who had no home. It is my desire to bring some sort of impactful resolution to that as we could then have permanent shelter beds available. So yes, that is a desire of mine, but I'm not proposing that at this time because there's a lot more work that has to be done. I have no idea at this moment exactly what will become of that site and the type of development project that it would be. But again, this is about control of the site so that we have the luxury of making those decisions. There is a lot of work in regards to the assessment of the need in this community. At this moment, no one can tell me exactly how many beds we need in the city of Charlottesville, but we all can see the evidence that there is a need for shelter beds in this community. We also have a temporary shelter facility that is only open during the winter months. Homelessness is not seasonal, so we have to have a better response than that. It's my desire that we would take the time to figure out exactly what our needs are, and then I will come back to you and propose what the future development of this site would be. I can tell you at this moment it would incorporate shelter beds as a permanent resolution to that problem, but I imagine and envision a lot more than that. So I just want to make that clear to everyone. Allay fears that this is the site of a future homeless shelter exclusively. I didn't say that. That is not what I'm proposing. And it will be a lot more than that, I can promise you. If you think about what the Crossings is today as a site where we all have celebrated great work in this community, imagine 0.2 or 2.0 and something else that we might be able to do in addition to other things. So that is what I'm submitting to you for your consideration this evening, is to acquire this property from CRHA. I'll add that there are additional community benefits that will come later as CRHA unveils what they would do with the resources that they would receive for this site. It checks additional boxes to benefit the city and its economic development strategies. So again, I am bringing this to you with the full endorsement of this is probably one of the best things we could do for what is available in our community to help us respond to that critical need.
Thank you very much. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments?
One question I've got is that I see that the assessed value of the two parcels is about 2.6-ish, $2.7 million. There's a mention that there would be an appraisal done, and so the request, as the memo says, is to provide up to $4.2 million to acquire the property. Are we agreeing to a $4 million price tag if the appraised value comes back at, say, 3.2?
I would suggest to you, yes, that we are. We do have an appraisal in the works, and that is coming. Dr. Gina Merritt did the sustainability plan for CRHA that was presented to you all last year. And in that presentation, she estimated the true value of that site at being $7 to $11 million based on what could become of the site. What we're proposing, or what we will eventually propose at that site, would be the equivalent of that kind of dense development. And we would just basically say that that in itself means that the city would be making a responsible investment going above appraised value for what will come down the road.
Okay.
I have a quick question. This was the original site for Crossings 2, correct?
That is correct.
And this money, if we don't spend it, could go away?
Well, we'll spend it in other ways because I don't like to send money back to the federal government. So the goal will be for us to find other ways to expend the funds. But This came together as an opportunity that just made sense, and because we have these funds that are available, then the thought was to use it this way. It has limitations on what else it can be used for, and because this is a serious community benefit, then it checks that box very easily.
That's good to hear. Thanks.
The only question, the report makes reference to comprehensive assessment of homeless service needs, including shelter beds, to operate 24/7, 365 days a year. Is there a known kind of timeline or next steps for when that assessment would begin, and kind of what the timeline would be for determining what may be possible build-outs at the site?
Yeah, I can't say that we have a timeline just yet. The conversation, as I've expressed to you all, that I'm engaged in right now is an attempt to make this a regional response, because we believe that our homelessness concerns are tied to the region. Most of the conversation has been with Albemarle County. There is interest in working with us to help to figure out what our true need is. I would imagine, and I feel confident, that no one's going to invest in the addressing of the issue to the tune that we as a city will. The individuals tend to come here. That's where the resources are. But the idea would be that we could get the county to engage with us in supporting the work to do this, because they are funding some of the same organizations that do the work. I doubt that there will be a regional response beyond that, but I have brought that up to others and intend to carry that conversation a little bit more forward. But in the meantime, it would be to get in line with the county and figure out when are we both going to be willing to support that type of study, the engagement of the current providers in that space, and then from there determine on a party to do a study, put them on a timeline to then bring back a report. I would like to see some movement on that this year, just so that I'm clear on the desire would be that we get the site and then we start moving towards planning very soon.
I think this is great. I think you're putting this together to the creative ways that you guys have thought about this and this particular site. I think that it could be for more than, quote, just a homeless shelter. It could be for a community center. I don't know, but I think it's a great location. I think our owning this will give us opportunities to do things that we wouldn't have had the chance to do. So I think I commend you all for thinking outside of the box.
Thank you.
I'm supportive of this. I have to say, over the last couple of days, we've gotten several comments from residents in the area that bring up some excellent points. I'm still supportive of it, but I think that as, should we move forward, we definitely need to have some very robust community engagement, as we always do.
That's my background. That's
yes,
what we will definitely do.
Yes, should we move forward with it. So it sounds like there's agreement for this. If so, will we want to move this to consent agenda item on February 5th?
I'm good with that.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just know for the public, I've been a very close observer of City Council since 2016, and this was not a proposal that came from City Council. This was a proposal that City management really proactively sought out and looked for, and that is really a sea change, I think, in what city government is prioritizing and how it's operating. So I think those in the community should really understand the importance of an action like this and the kind of change that there is in city government. I think it's exciting thing to see.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Then the next item that we have on the agenda, Jay Stroman and April Wimberly will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have before you a proposed ordinance to amend City Code Section 22-4. And these amendments are to bring the city code in line with some changes in state law that have taken place over several years, and that would promote a more nimble and a more productive procurement effort. There are three major points that I would call out with respect to the proposed changes. First of all, the amendments would permit goods and non-professional services to be procured through competitive negotiation without a prior written finding by this body that competitive sealed bidding is not practical or not fiscally advantageous. That's an advantage that communities that are following state law are enjoying, and that this ordinance would address and make possible for the city of Charlottesville. Second, it would remove the requirement for cooperative procurement for construction contracts that the partner locality must be within 75 miles of Charlottesville. Cooperative procurement is a very useful procurement tool because it allows us to use the good contracts that other communities have in order to get a great deal for Charlottesville, and those procurements can typically be done efficiently and speedily. And third, it would add the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments and the Virginia Sheriff's Association to the list of public bodies and agencies with whom the city may engage in these cooperative procurement solicitations. There are some other minor changes which go to clarity and readability. I would mention two things. First of all, there are a couple of time-sensitive procurements that are in the pipeline to the extent that council may wish to consider voting on this issue tonight and dispensing with the second reading. That would aid in obtaining those time-sensitive procurements. I also want to mention that although Ms. Wimberly is not here with us this evening, she, much of what you're reading is her very good work, and I want to thank her publicly for her efforts, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or clarification, councilors?
I have none. I would frankly like to suggest that we consider the option of, if we're unanimous in support of it, or at least if 4 of the 5 of us are, that we take it up tonight without needing a second reading.
Yeah, is there support to vote on this tonight? It sounds like, there's any opposition to that, so I think we're prepared to vote on it
Do we need
tonight.
some magic language, Mr. City Attorney?
Simply a motion to adopt the ordinance dispensing with a second reading would be sufficient.
All right, I would so move.
Second.
Okay, no discussion, can we vote? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, and please be sure to thank April for us. I know how it is doing those staff reports, so thank you. So we had some written reports, and are there other council? Do you have any other questions for city manager to follow up?
I will say to the written report on RWSA, I would be interested at some point having RWSA come here to explain what's happened with the pump station, the cost of repair, the extent of the impact, because I think the public is rightly concerned that there's a $40 million facility that is broken and put in human waste into the Rivanna, and certainly I don't have any answers into terms of how it happened or what the timeline is to fix it, and I think the public does deserve to have those questions answered.
I'll reach out to Mr. Mario and make sure we set that up.
And I'll just say that they were planning to do a oral report today, but because the agenda did look extensive, they just requested to move to the next meeting.
We have a Ravenna meeting
Next
tomorrow.
quarter.
Yeah, we'll confirm that. I was thinking the same thing, that we'll be talking about it in detail tomorrow in the board meeting.
Yeah, that's a really fair point.
So we'll try to get them to come back to, as soon as we,
They
we
usually
can schedule.
provide a quarterly report and then an annual report in January.
Oh.
They come for
Right.
in person in January.
Okay. Any other comments? Maybe I went too quick with the written reports. Any other comments on the written reports? Any questions for the city manager to follow up on?
We have one more matter that was added at the end of the agenda.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Yes. Before we go into that, Mr. Sanders, someone mentioned the Avon Street speed study, I think was Mr. Miller. Is that something that, if you could, have engineering that would put on their list to study that for a speed study for maybe a speed reduction or traffic calming or something?
I'm sure 2 people in the room already took that note, sir. We will get that looked at for you.
Thank you. You had something to add on to the index?
Yes. I don't know if there's official verbiage for this, but I will be stepping down as a voting member from TJPDC, thus reinstating Phil Duranzio as the voting member from the city.
Do we need to reappoint Mr. Duranzio at this juncture?
it seems like that would be appropriate action because that was vote as a
Yeah.
Yes.
group.
And this was discussed and approved with him in advance.
Yeah, he's only like, what?
Right.
No, yeah, we talked with him, so can I get a motion to remove Natalie, Ms. Oshrin, and to add Phil back onto the, what's the name of it?
The TJPDC.
The TJPDC.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion?
It's clearly not on enough committees.
Yeah.
Well, and just so people will wonder, that there was, we had a little confusion or misunderstanding, however you want to characterize it, when we were appointing folks. And this is necessary to fix the mistake that we made last time.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the city manager? If not, it's the second time for community matters. As of someone from the, yes, sir, come on. You know the process, sir.
I do. Well, you know I had something prepared tonight, but I'm not gonna say anything. First thing, I will tell you that in my travels, I always thank council for the ordinance, the right to unionize. That was a big deal, and I will always remember the city giving us that ability. I'm on the negotiating team. It has not been going very well. We just can't seem to get over the hump at CAT with which we've gotten, previously. Keisha mentioned that the school bus operators losing their stipend is going to be huge for them to lose that. They've talked about maybe a small increase in the, July 1st, but that's not going to keep those guys. And we're not moving anywhere at CAT. We talk about the carbon zero, the electric buses. I'm all for all of that. But to me, the foundation, we're steps ahead when you're talking about this stuff. I'm all for it, but we're steps ahead. The foundation is the people. You have to invest in the drivers. Ms. Diaz commented on how we're aging out. We don't get a good contract, we can lose 10, 15 drivers at CAT. That would significantly decrease our routes and what we provide right now, which isn't great service. We are having a hard time just keeping the buses on the road. When we can't get our riders back. We've lost them. I mean, when you have 1-7 and it takes an hour and a half to get to work, you're not going to continually to rely on us for that. We need people. We need buses. We currently have buses that are sitting on the lot that we can't use. They need to be wrapped. I hear that's red tape. Why? They've been there for months. I drive a bus every day that you can't even read the sign on. Why is that? We have 3 other Star Trams out there that are brand new, have been there on the lot, but we can't drive them. Maybe because they don't have a radio. Maybe because they don't have the signage on the bus. Why is this taking so long? We can't get uniforms. We can't get a contract. We've been dealing with that for 2 years. Why is this a problem? Give CAT the resources. I'm all about transit here. I live in this neighborhood. I live in this city. I've lived here all of my life, and I'm very passionate about transit. I want fair. That's all I care about is fair. I want CAT to succeed. I want it to grow. I want it to be bigger and better than what it is now. I want electric. I want whatever it takes. I want to see our services just soar. I want us to be a Richmond-type place here. I want people to be able to utilize our transit system to get where they need to go. And that is just as important as affordable housing. People need to get to work. They need to get to where they need to go. And an affordable bus trip is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak?
My name is Dina Wells, and I'm sure that y'all know Gloria Beard. She is my grandmother. She has housed me and my son, who is 4, in her house because the Salvation Army has put us out and said that they couldn't house us there or anything. And I've been struggling with paying my car payment and living with my grandmother for about 4 months now, due to not being in a house. I have not heard from Charlottesville Housing at all. I was told that I would be moved over at West Haven between November and December of 2023, and I have not heard anything far as moving over there or what's happened. And I've been on the voucher list forever, and I have not moved on that list except for 75, and I'm not moving at all on that list. I don't know what can be done, but the proper people aren't reaching out, and I can't get a hold of anybody as far as finding out resources. Just like Network to Work, they were supposed to help me find place, and I have not heard from them except for them pointing me in the direction to be able to find a job. I have to pick up a second job to be able to afford my car payment, which is $490.14 for me, and on top of $390 car insurance as well. The job is not paying enough for me either. But my grandmother took me in as far as my son, so we didn't be out in the cold. We came from Greene County and been in the Salvation Army, and she was not going to see us out in the street along with everybody else that I've seen that's homeless as well, far as like being on the downtown mall and everything. I've seen a lot of people that are homeless just as well as us, but it's nice to have family members to take you in, but that's only acceptable a certain amount of time before they get tired of it. And my grandmother is to have surgery on February 18th for her knee replacement, so she's going to be down for months. She can't help us do anything, so just want to keep it in mind that it is a struggle for everybody out there, including me as well as being homeless as well. If it wasn't for my grandmother, me and my son would be out in the street as well in the cold weather.
Thank you, Ms. Baird. If you can give us your name and number, and Sam, if we can get someone from Social Services to reach out to her. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Usher. Are there other speakers that would like to speak this evening? With no further business, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.